Hey there, everybody. We're just going to give it a few more minutes here as people trickle in. So hold tight and we'll be starting pretty soon. JP, go ahead and share your screen with your presentation. I'm seeing the people flow in. There we go. Thanks everybody for joining. Before we get started, why don't you put in the chat field where you're from? I want to know where everybody is. I'm in Denver, Colorado. All right. We've got North Carolina, we've got California, Canada. Oh, we've got people all over the place. Arizona. Newmont Mining. I used to work in the same building there years ago. It's always a challenge when we can't talk to each other, so I love the chat feature. We're going to give it a few more minutes here. Puerto Rico, India. And since Tom sent in the first answer, I'm going to go ahead and send him a Datavalve game for DBAs by DBAs. Tom, I'm going to reach out to you personally and get some information from you. So hang tight. It'll happen today. We can't do a webinar without any giveaways. All right, it's 12:02. I think we're getting close here. All right, I think we're ready to get started. Okay, thanks everybody for joining Datavalve's webinar today. Global Practice Lead and Director, JP Chen, will be your speaker today and we'll be covering migrating to Azure SQL Database. Before we get started, I just have a few housekeeping items. Please submit any questions at the bottom panel of your screen and our team will be answering questions during the event and JP will do his best time permitting at the end of the presentation to cover anything not answered. We're recording today's session and we'll be sending out a replay of the webinar as soon as it's available. You can also access links to resources in the chat section that I'll be adding once we get started. That's all for me. JP, let's get going. We're recording, begin.
All right, thank you, Donna. Right, hi everyone. Are you interested in migrating your SQL Server instances over to Azure, but not sure how to get started? Well, you're in the right place. In the next hour, I will share with you the essentials and take you step by step how to create an Azure SQL database and migrate a simple database using Data Migration Assistant, DMA. Okay. I'm JP Chen from Datavalve. I'm the Senior Director of the SQL Server practice, and I am really fortunate to have the privileges to work with 200 plus SQL DBAs in the US and India, supporting 250 plus customers, SQL Server environments ranging from small to enterprise. Our team and I can help you in designing high availability solutions, migrating your environment from on-premises to the cloud, and also resolving complex performance issues. Even if you have 0 or 25 SQL Server DBAs, or if you have 1 or 1,000 plus SQL Server instances, our team and I can work with you in supporting your SQL Server environment 24/7, maximizing uptime and minimizing outage and callouts. Just a brief intro about Datavalve, who we are. We are one of the biggest database service support provider in North America. In addition to SQL Server, we also support other database platforms such as MySQL, Postgres, SQL, MongoDB, DB2, and Oracle. We have been in business for the past 16 plus years, 8 plus years of cloud support, and our team consists of 100 plus cloud essays and solution architects. and engineers. With that comes with the positive outcomes. We have 700 plus customers, 200,000 plus databases managed, and 150 plus cloud migrations. Okay. Now I will hand the microphone over to Jenna to talk about our survey and your chance to win a Bose headset.
Yes, thanks, JP. Just want to let you guys know Datavalve is trying to learn more about organizations' cloud adoptions and uses across different workloads. As part of this, we'd like you to take part in our cloud adoption survey that we've launched through Tech Validate, an independent surveyor. Please use the link in the slide to complete. I'll also add this to our chat function so that you have access, and we'll be selecting a winner from today's webinar to win a pair of the Bose noise canceling headphones. Make sure to fill it in today so that we have all of your answers. I'll put that in the chat function shortly. Thanks, JP. Back to you.
Great. Thank you, Jenna. All right, here's the agenda for our presentation today. We will go over what is Azure SQL Database, and then move on to a brief overview of Azure SQL Database options, and then planning your Azure SQL Database migration, creating and connecting to an Azure SQL Database, then move on to migrating a simple database over to Azure SQL Database, and wrap up with DBA responsibilities in the cloud. Please note that this is an introductory session, 100 to 200 level. It's a high-level overview on migrating to Azure SQL Database. There's only so much we can cover under an hour. We will make the most out of it. And we will work on more presentations in later days to cover more in-depth contents and topics. How do we handle Q&A? Okay, you ask. Now, like Jenna already pointed out earlier, if you have a question, please type them out in the chat option, right? And we will go over them between sessions, between the different sections, or in our Q&A time at the end of the presentation. Okay. We have two SMEs, Ben Jungleward and also Mike Krause, and they will help with answering some of the questions that you may pose up there. Okay. As we only have an hour for the webinar, we will limit our questions and we'll follow up offline if the questions require more time to further discuss. Of course, no one knows everything about the cloud or migration over to the cloud. Right? Life is all about live and learn. If you ask something very interesting, in other words, something that I do not know, okay, or not sure about the answer, I will definitely find out and check with our team and get back to you. Okay. All right, what is the Azure SQL Database? Azure SQL Database is a relational database as a service hosted in Azure. I know some people say Azure, right? I say Azure, okay? You say Azure, it both applies, okay? Right? And it's a category of platform as a service. Now, please do not be confused with infrastructure as a service, IaaS, okay? Azure SQL Database is a managed cloud service with no operating system access. That's extremely critical to point out, right? You will not have OS access to Azure SQL Database. Then why would you use it, right? It has many benefits. Some of the examples like speed of provisioning, you're gonna see this in a later demo. We're gonna show you, you can create an Azure SQL Database within minutes. It's not like the old days where you need to submit a PO for this order, buy the server, and install SQL on it. Right? You also have a pay-as-you-go and scale up, vertical scaling, and also scale out, horizontal scaling. Right? Vertical scaling, that's increasing resources, right, and upgrading resources. Scaling out, you create more instances. Okay? Right? And the next benefit is you have built-in high availability, intelligence, and management. And Microsoft has the SLA of 99.99% availability guarantee, right? In the diagram here, we have some comparisons between on-premise, okay, and IaaS and PaaS. Okay. Now, remember, the blue sections are the ones that the cloud provider will be responsible. The color green are the ones that where you will be responsible. For example, for on-premises, you are responsible for everything, right? Server, storage, networking, virtualization, OS, so on and so forth, right? In infrastructure as a service, IaaS, right? So the cloud provider will be responsible for server, storage, networking, virtualization, right? You'll be responsible for the green sections, right? In PaaS, you will be responsible for the apps and data. Okay. We will now go over on a high-level overview of Azure SQL Database options that you need to know before getting started with your migration. They include deployment options, purchasing models, and service tiers. Let's start with the deployment options and first differentiate IaaS versus PaaS in Azure. Right? Remember, infrastructure as a service, and the SQL Server is basically on Azure VMs. They are the exact match of what you have for your on-premises SQL Server instances on virtual machines. You're going to have OS access and also control, right? Again, this infrastructure as a service. Platform as a service, PaaS, you have two different types. You have Azure SQL managed instances, right? Azure SQL MI, and you also have Azure SQL Database, right? For managed instances, they are best for most of the migrations to the cloud, and they are lift and shift ready. Okay. The next one is Azure SQL Database. They are best for modern cloud apps, okay? And they are fully managed SQL DB engine with two deployment options. You have the single database and elastic pool. Okay, it's critical to highlight that in this webinar, in this presentation, we will focus on Azure SQL Database. Let's take a closer look at the deployment options for PaaS, Platform as a Service. Again, you have Azure SQL MI, and you have Azure SQL Database. For Azure SQL Managed Instance, it's basically a collection of user and system databases with a shared resources on an instance level. It enables easy migration to the cloud with minimal to no changes. As per Microsoft, it's near, the keyword is near 100% compatibility with on-premises SQL Server. The total database size can go up to 8 terabyte. With Azure SQL Database, you have two major categories. The first one is a single database, and the second one is elastic pool. Okay, the single database is elastic pool. The single database is similar to a contained database in SQL Server. If you had experience of contained databases, then you will see that they're very similar. It has its own set of resources. It's great for applications that need a single data source. The database size can go up to 100 terabyte. With Azure SQL Database Elastic Pools, it allows you to manage multiple databases with different performance requirements. Multiple databases can share a set of compute resources to reduce waste. You have the flexibility to move database in and out of an elastic pool. We're going to do that a little bit later on in the demo. Well, when can you use it, you ask? Let's look at an example. Right? Let's say if you have two databases, one is used during business hours, the other one for overnight processing. Placing these two databases in an elastic pool allows you to run the overnight processes using the resources that would have gone wasted, as the daytime database is not using it overnight. But let's look at a more practical example, a real life example. But this actually reminds me of living in New York City in my early 20s and sharing a small apartment with my roommate. he worked overnight, he worked during daytime. We had an agreement. He would have the apartment during the daytime, like for example, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. and I have it 7 p.m. to 9 a.m. most of the time. My roommate pay half and I pay half the rent. We both save a good amount of money and there's no waste of resources. In this case, the small apartment, right? You can think of it as that way. Okay, it's more cost effective. Now, purchasing models enable you to select your choice of compute, storage, and I/O resources. First, let's look at DTU and then review virtual core. Okay. DTU is a database transaction unit, DTU. That's where the acronym comes from. And it's a bundle of measure, compute, storage, and I/O resources. It has two different sizes, DTUs for single database and eDTUs for elastic pools. They are only available for Azure SQL Database. It's not for managed instances. Okay. And the general recommendation is that, let's say if you already have Azure SQL databases that you have provisioned last year or a few years ago, like the general recommendation is that if it meets your performance and business requirements, you can continue to use it. However, there's a new different type of purchasing model, the virtual core recall model, the recall based. The key difference is that the keyword is independent. Okay? This is a bundle, right? So you have the option of independent scaling of compute, storage, and I/O resources. There are two compute tiers, provision and serverless. Okay? And there are, of course, like the provision is low, the price is a little bit cheaper. It's critical to highlight that it's calculated based on the hour, right, for provision. For serverless, you specify the auto scaling of the compute resources over a configurable range, right? You can configure it, right? And it can auto pause and resume based on workload, right? And it depends on what you need. It has auto scaling, okay? And the unit price is higher. Again, it's quite critical to point out that it's calculated based on seconds. And another critical aspect of it is that it's available for both Azure SQL Database and also Azure SQL Managed Instance. Microsoft recommends using this model that we call virtual core model. If you're going to create a new instance today, this is what you should do. That's what Microsoft is telling us, using the virtual core base. Okay. Now, let's look at the three different service tiers that are designed for different types of applications. First one is general purpose. It's designed for common workloads. It offers balanced compute and storage options. And it's for both Azure SQL Database and Azure SQL Managed Instance. It's have some of the benefits such as 5 to 10 millisecond storage latency, and the SLA is 99% for non-zone redundant deployments with 2 or more replicas. We have the reference link here. You can review more about it. And just to want to point out that the presentation, the PowerPoint deck will be available for downloads, okay, after the webinar. Right. The second one's business critical. It's designed for OLTP applications with high transaction rate and some of the lowest latency I/O. And again, critical to point out that it's for both Azure SQL Database and also Azure SQL Managed Instance. Okay. It has low latency workloads. It's for low latency workloads with high resiliency for failure and fast failovers, 1 to 2 millisecond storage latency. It's much quicker than the general purpose. Right? The SLA is 99.995 for zone redundant deployments and 99.99% for non-zone redundant deployments with 2 or more replicas. The next one is hyperscale. And it's interesting to highlight that it's only for Azure SQL Database. It's highly scalable storage. We scale out and fast database restore capabilities. And it's for large databases up to 100 terabyte. Of course, it's only for virtual core only. And the SLA is 99.95% with 1 secondary replica and 99.99 with 0 replicas. Right, let's look at some of the FAQs. So most of the time, our customers will be asking these 3 common questions here. And should you choose like IaaS or PaaS? It depends, right? It depends. Similar to life, a lot of things depends. In this case, it depends what you really need, right? So for infrastructure as a service, IaaS, it's basically SQL Server on Azure VMs. It's a good option for migrating on-premises SQL Server without any database change. Right? You're going to have full control on maintenance, patching, timing, customize the way you like it. You can stop and start the services when needed. Right? The other ones are platform as a service, right? Because that's the one we're going to focus on this throughout this presentation here. It's an Azure SQL Database or managed instance. You have multiple deployment options and service tiers. You also can offload, again, very critical, offload administrative efforts. You administer your database and no need to manage the database engine, the operating system, or the hardware. Okay. Another most commonly asked question is, can you convert, right? We already talked about the 2 different models, right? Can you convert from DTU based to recall based? Great news. You can, yes, you can. And there's no downtime for it, right? There's no downtime for the conversion, okay? And converting to the recall based model can reduce your cost if your single database or elastic pool consumes more than 300 DTUs. You can convert using the Azure portal. Again, no downtime. Of course, if you're already on MI, okay, Azure SQL Managed Instance, it only supports the recall model anyway. So there's no need to think about conversion there. Okay. The third question that one of the FAQ is that, is there a pricing calculator? I want to see like how much it's going to cost me. Yes, I'm not going to go into the extreme specifics here, but you just need to go to this URL, you key in what you need, okay, you specify your requirements on the options that are available, and it will calculate the monthly cost for you. Okay. Right, these are the FAQs. I cannot see the Q&A. Okay, is there any other questions that we already posed that we need to further follow up on?
No questions that I'm showing for now, JP.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Right. In case you do, right, definitely we can catch up offline. Right, that goes to all of our attendees here. Right. In this section, in the coming section here, we're going to go over in a high-level overview of planning your migration. We're going to look into the considerations, target, and migration tools. Right, what are the tools that can help us migrate? The key factor to consider when evaluating migration options depend on the number of servers and databases, the size of the databases, and the acceptable business downtime during the migration process. Of course, do not forget about telling your business users or go through the change control process as per your organization's requirement. Right? And another recommendation is that, I know it's not on this slide, but we generally recommend migrate your non-production environments before doing the production environments. Right. While you can change them later on without downtime, you definitely should plan your target to minimize the efforts for change. Right? If we do it correctly, later on you don't need to make changes, right? Consider, of course, you should consider the business guidelines. You should consider general guidelines to help you choose the correct deployment model, pricing model, and service tiers. The deployment model, I know we already went over it. You need to understand your application workflow and usage pattern to design between a single database or elastic pool. Like this pricing model, you choose between record, DTU, or serverless. It depends, right? Of course, for new ones, choose the record, right? The record here. Okay. The service tiers, you need to choose between 3 service tiers for different types of applications. Okay. General purpose, business critical, and hyperscale. In the previous slide, we already went over them. Okay. Now, what are the tools that are migration tools that are available for the migration? Okay. The 2 most common ones are DMA, the Data Migration Assistant, and also Azure Database Migration Service. Okay. There are other alternative migration options available as well. Right? The first one we're going to go over is the DMA, Data Migration Assistant. They're generally speaking for small migrations. Right? And the good news is that it can help with assessment and migration. Right? In a later demo, you're going to be able to see that. We're going to go do it really quickly in a demo. Okay. And the second one is Azure Database Migration Service, DMS. It's for large migrations, right? And you should select a preferred Azure VNet during the provisioning. Okay. And the other common options are, yes, you can do it in SSMS. There are options. When you right-click on the database, you're going to see options to migrate schema and data, right? And for example, export to Backpack. When you right-click on a database, when you move your mouse all the way down to deploy database to Microsoft Azure SQL Database, it will create a Backpack file for you. Okay, right. The same goes for export data tier application. The good news is that when you do this, SSMS actually make an assessment for you. If you are able to create a Backpack file, that means you are able to migrate it without any problems. Okay, generally speaking, that's based on my experience. If you can create Backpack file, you'll be able to do that. You'll be able to migrate it without problems. Okay. The other option is transactional replication. Yes, you can use a application to do the migration. It's slightly more complicated to set up as it requires setting up publication, distributions, and subscriptions. Right? It can minimize downtime if done correctly. The other option that on top of my head, I did not put on the PowerPoint slide, here's you can do bulk copy, right? You can use a BCP utility to export the data from your source and import the data into your target SQL database, right? And just one more on top of my head, you have SQL Data Sync, okay? Data Sync, okay? It's a service built on Azure SQL Database that lets you synchronize data you select bi-directionally, right? The keywords bi-directionally across multiple databases, both on premises and in the cloud. You can keep your data updated across several databases in Azure SQL Database or SQL Server. Okay, that's SQL Data Sync. Okay, in this section, and also next one, we're gonna do a couple of demos. We're gonna first create Azure SQL Database. You're gonna see the steps that requires to create a database and also connect to a Azure database. And also we're gonna talk about how to use DMA to make assessment, okay, make assessment on the migration, and also use DMA to do the actual migration. Okay, right. So I'm going to show you how to create an Azure SQL database now. Okay. Right. Are we logged on to my portal? Okay. Okay. Bear with me for a second here. Okay. Right. So this demo I'm talking about, creating an Azure SQL database. Okay. Azure portal. I'm going to click on SQL Database, hit create. Okay. The first thing I recommend everyone to do is to create a new resource group, right? Because it's going to be a container that where you're going to create all the databases, and that's where we're going to create our databases and also Elastic group. Okay? And when we want to remove it later on, we just need to remove the resource group. Okay, DB demo. Okay, right. You name it whatever you want. Yes.
They can't see your screen.
Oh, so sorry about
They're
that.
still showing the PowerPoint. Thanks,
Okay.
everybody, for bringing that to my attention.
Yes. Thank you for that. Give me a second. Let me
Okay. I'll confirm too.
Okay.
Now we can see it.
Okay. Yeah. So sorry about that. Right. Like I was saying earlier, make sure you create your resource group, right? Name your resource group. Make sure you confirms your company's naming standards if you have one, right? But most importantly, make sure you remember what you name it, right? Okay, name the resource group because it's going to just think of it as a container, right? For everything you're going to create, and it's easy for removal as well, right? You just need to remove the resource group. Everything in the resource group will get removed. Right, name your database. In this case, I'm going to name it Azure SQL Demo. Right. As you can see on the right-hand side, it has some guidelines, right, or some of the mandatory, options that you need to follow. Okay, it's telling you there. Okay. In this case, I'm going to name it Azure SQL Demo. So I'm going to create a new logical server in this case. Okay, I'm going to create. Okay, so admin, I'm going to name it JP, right? Because my name is JP. But if your name is JP as well, call me. Okay, nothing new to any one of us here. Now, location, this is quite critical, right? Make sure you select the region based on the features. Again, the features that are available in that specific region, because some of the unique features are not available in all of the regions. As you can see, you have many different regions, right? So again, it's quite critical. And considering the region, you should choose it based on the features that are available and also specific location proximity, right? Close to you, right? Of course, features the highest priority, and then you move on to make sure you choose one that's closer to you. Okay. Hit OK here, right? I'm not going to create elastic pool for now. I'm going to create one later on. Okay, and this is I want to show you here. This is where you choose between the recall, and you're going to be wondering where's DTU, right? Where's DTU? I know you talk about DTU. Where is it? Right? It's right here. You just need to click this arrow here. This will give you the option to choose the DTU option. Okay, right. I'm going to go back to the recall-based processing option here. Right. In respect of time, we're going to go through this really quickly, and I'm going to leave everything the default option here. Okay. Networking, I'm going to leave the default option. Again, we're going to have more presentations in the future to cover more in-depth topics. Right? These are some of the options we're going to cover in the future. Okay. Tag, right? I'm going to tag it so I know this is for our SQL team. Okay. Okay. Very important. On the last step, this is what you're going to pay per month. Estimated cost per month, right? Make sure you don't see any surprise here, right? This is no surprise to me, right? $380.03 USD. Okay, I'm going to create one here. Okay. Right, this will take, as you can see here, this is in progress. This will take a couple minutes, right? Rather than for all of us to watch, like, that this progress bar keeps on deployment in progress. I'm going to move on to the next topic. We're going to come back to this one because, again, only because it will take a couple of minutes here, right? Not hours, minutes, okay? Right, let me move to the PowerPoint slide. Okay, excuse me. All right, so we are creating the Azure SQL Database now. Next one. Okay, we're going to talk about migrating a sample database over to Azure SQL Database. Right, we're going to talk about the overview of DMA, and we will also run migration assessment using a DMA and actually migrate a sample database using DMA. Okay, right. In terms of assessment, you can assess the on-premises SQL Server instance migrating to Azure SQL Database. Right. It will provide detailed guidance how to resolve some of the blocking issues if you have blocking issues, and also identify the partially support and also unsupported features. Right. If you have these two issues here, you have to stop. Make sure you resolve all the problems and work on the workarounds, alternative workarounds before you move on to the migration, right? Because it defeats the purpose. If you migrate and you're going to have more problems, right? You definitely need to resolve the problems before you actually do the migration. We will also talk about migrate an on-premise database over to Azure SQL Database. Okay, right. I'm going to run a demo. Okay, that how to work on the assessment. We're going to make the assessment on how to migrate sample database. Before the migration, you need to run an assessment, right? We're going to connect to a source, specify target, and then review the feature parity and also compatibility issues, right? So I'm going to go to my on-premise instance. This is my on-premises instance. Jenna, I want to make sure everyone can see me. Jenna, can you see my screen? Just in case.
I can see it.
Okay, excellent. All right, great. Okay. All right, so we're gonna create an assessment here. Okay. First, give it a name, right? Give it a name like. Okay. This is. Excuse me. Let me close this out. Let me start from the beginning. So, right. So you can download the data migration assistant. Right. It's called Microsoft Data Migration Assistant. Just download it, install it, right? Yes, it's free. You can download it. Okay, give it a second to load up. Okay, once it's up, you just need to create a new project, right? So in this case, we're going to make an assessment project. Azure SQL Migration. Right, just name it. Name it something that you're going to remember, right? Because we're going to save it. And the assessment type is going to be database engine. Source is SQL Server, right? Azure SQL Database. Yes, you're going to notice that there are a couple options here, right? You can choose MI, you can choose SQL and Azure VM, right? And also just SQL. In this case, our targets Azure SQL Database. We're going to create this project, the assessment project. Again, like I pointed out earlier, you can check for database compatibility and also check for feature parity. Okay, click next. Okay. Now you're going to connect to a source. Right, source. This is my on-prem instance. Okay, just select the database. This is a very small database. Okay, it's well under 100 megabyte or much smaller. Okay. Right, then you can start the assessment. Okay. And in case it's a problem, it's going to show up here. And the key is that you should resolve those problems before you actually move on to the actual migration, right? The good news is that it's going to point out exactly what the problems will be. Okay, it will tell you as such, right? For example, here, right? And this is a very small database. You see limited problems here. However, for databases created many years ago, you may have some problems. So, but the key is to resolve them before you move on. And I just click on compatibility issues, right? So again, it's going to make the assessment and we will show you what the compatibility issues are, right? For different compatibility levels, right? And how can you resolve those problems, right? Okay, right. Again, in this case, we don't have any problem, right? And if we do, please do review it very carefully so you can resolve the problems, right? Right. So we save the assessment. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to the portal to identify the server name so we can connect to it. Okay. Connect to the portal, so the Azure instance that we already created. Okay. Right, now we're going to connect to it. Okay, as you can see, deployment succeed, right? So we just need to go to the resources. Okay, and this is what you need. It's the logical server name. You just need to copy it and you're going to connect to it. Now, we're going to fail here. Connection will fail here, okay? Because we have not opened up the firewall rule, okay? Again, I'm going to show you is that we fail. Excuse me here, wait a second. So even though, right, so even though I'm going to key in the correct password, it's going to fail. Right, so you have an option to sign in here. You also have an option to go to the portal and set the firewall rule here, okay? Again, in respect of time, I'm going to do this very quickly. I just need to add my own IP address, save it. Okay, it's successful. If I go back, if I hit connect again, it will connect me, right? So like I said, you can provision your instance in minutes, okay? And this is the portal, excuse me, this is the Azure SQL database that we have, right? This is the one that we have created. Notice that it has no tables, okay? And we're gonna migrate this database, everything in this database from on-premises over to the Azure SQL database, right? The Azure SQL demo database here, okay? Again, the important thing to remember here is make sure you set your firewall rule. I know just add my own IP, you have many different options there, right? Right, let's go to the next topic. Now we're going to actually do a migration, right? We're going to migrate a sample database to Azure SQL Database. Okay, I'm going to go back to DMA, Data Migration Assistant. We're going to create a new project, okay? Do the actual migration here. We're going to name it. Right, just name it Azure SQL Migration. Then you name it, according to your own naming standards. Okay? Like source, okay, that's the SQL Server instance. Target, Azure SQL Database. And we're going to migrate both schema and data. We're going to create, and you need to specify your source, okay, connect to it, and select the correct database. In this case, I only have one database. If you have many databases, it's absolutely critical that you select the correct one, okay? Right, next. Now you select the target. Target is still on my computer's memory. It's just paste it, okay? If you lost track of it, you just need to go back and select the logical server name from the portal, right? From your Azure portal. Okay. Right. In this case, I'm going to key in my password. Connect. Right. As you can see, detect my database. Next. And it's preparing the source database schema. Right? It's going to provide you an option to select the objects that you need. Right? In this case, I'm going to select everything. But again, you have the option to choose what you need. Right? Everything's listed here: schema, stored procedures, tables, the user-defined functions, user-defined types, views, and XML schema collections. Right? I'm going to hit generate SQL script. It's recommended that you save scripts, right? Okay, it's going to scripting the schema objects. It's going to give you the option. All right, like I said, it's recommended that you save this. Okay, in this case, this is demo. In respect of time, I'll move a little bit quickly. Like I'm going to deploy the schema and then migrate the data. Okay, this is a pretty small database. That's why it goes to very quickly, right? It depends on the size of your database. We're going to go over a little bit later on. What if you have a gigantic database, a way big database? What are the options to migrate? We're going to talk about it briefly in a later slide here. Okay, right, and then we're going to migrate the data. Okay, just start the migration. Yeah, that type of exciting feeling that you see a green check mark and keep on making progress. It's always there, right? As long as I've been in the IT industry. I'm pretty sure everyone feels the same, right? It's the green check mark, everything goes fine. Okay, it's complete. It's telling you it's complete, right? Again, I know I said before, because this is a very small database. That's why it goes through very quickly. You don't have any problems. For big databases, you may need to fix a couple issues before you actually do the migration, right? Now, let's look at, if we refresh this database, again, all the tables from here, all the objects from the on-prem instance should already migrate to the Azure SQL Database on the cloud, okay? We're gonna refresh, you're gonna see the tables there. Okay, my expand table. For example, I'm going to just do a select statement on the customer table. Right, it's going to show 847 rows here. Right. Okay. Again, this is on your Azure SQL database. If you want to see, maybe want to check like. Again, this is just eyeballing, right? Because usually you should do a table comparison, right? And also do a database compare, right? Make sure all of them, like everything gets moved over. Okay, this is my on-prem instance. This is on-prem database. Also have 147 rows. Okay. All right, let's go to the next topic here. Now we're going to create the elastic pool. Right, before we create elastic pool, I need to create another database because we only have one database so far. Right, we're going to create another database and then create an elastic pool, and I will show you how to move those two databases into the elastic pool. Okay. With this, we need to go back to our portal. database. I'm going to create one very quickly. Okay, make sure it's on the same resource group, database name. I'm just going to name this 02. I'm going to leave it the server. It's quite critical to highlight that it needs to be on the same server, okay, in order for you to move it into the Elastic pool. But the Elastic pool also need to be on the same logical server here. Okay, and we're going to just create, and it's the same exact price, right? Right, so this database is in progress, getting created. While it's doing that, I'm going to create an Elastic pool. With that, you just need to do a search and type in SQL Elastic pools. Okay, I'm going to create an Elastic pool here. Okay, again, very critical. Same resource group. You need to name the Elastic pool. I just name it EP. Okay, and you just need to remember where you create it. Okay. Okay, I'm going to just accept all the default options and get it created. Remember, at this point, we have one Elastic pool, once this completes, of course, and 2 databases. What we're going to do next is to move those 2 databases over to the Elastic pool. Okay. Just give it a few seconds. It's going to pop up. Okay, well, yep, see, we quickly, right? So we go to resources. Again, this is the Elastic pool we just created, right? And you can create a new database there. However, we're going to add the 2 databases we already created earlier to this Elastic pool. Okay. Okay, you just need to create databases. Click on databases and add databases. Okay, right. Because these 2 databases are on the same logical server, that's why I can add them. If they are on different one, you will not be able to add them. In this case, we both databases are on this server here, right? DB Azure SQL 01, right? So it's on there, okay? And I will hit apply, okay, and then save. Right, it's doing some scaling in the background. Right, if you're wondering where it's up to, just click here. But however, it will only show you deployment in progress. Okay, but it should complete rather quickly. Okay, give it a few more seconds here. Okay, there we go. It's already been complete. Okay, if I go to resources. Okay, right, again, we're on the Elastic pool. Okay, you will be able to see it has 2 databases, right? And it's on the same logical server here, right? If we click on config here, you're gonna be able to see those databases. Okay, those 2 we added, right? Demo and demo 02. Right, let's go to the next point. Right, let's go over some of the FAQs. Like I said earlier, what if you have a large migration, right? And it's over, database is over a terabyte. What are the options, right? You can use something called data box, right? Data box, the data box, this is 40 terabyte, and the regular data box is 100 terabyte, and the data box heavy is 1 petabyte. You just need to order it online, right? In the portal, you're gonna have the option to order online and also copy your data, ship it back to Microsoft, and Microsoft will connect it to Azure storage. And from your Azure storage account, you'll be able to retrieve the file there. Okay. Another question is, can I move Azure SQL Database in and out of Elastic Pool? Yes, we can. In the earlier demo, I just moved both databases in Elastic Pool, right? The key is that as long as it's in the same logical server. Okay? And another FAQ is that I have, for example, 1.5 terabyte database and its usage. My apology for a typo here. Okay. And its usage is limited to seasonal activities. For example, tax season is coming up, and the database is specifically only for filing tax purposes, right? Or if after April, and you may have limited usage, right? However, for the database that big, 10 recalls are required to this size, or there are options for cost saving. Yes, in this case, it's perfect for serverless, right? You can use serverless to auto scale and it's built per second, right? You can, it will auto pause it for you, right? And resume the workload as needed, right? When you're not using it. Okay, right. DBA responsibilities in the cloud. As we migrate our databases over to the cloud, many of us as DBAs are probably asking, what are our new responsibilities? Well, no worries there. Right? There are plenty of work for us to do as DBAs. The cloud automates many of the manual tasks and provide benefits of speed of provisioning, like we already saw, and also increase the efficiency of resources. Okay? However, we as DBAs will continue to be in high demands as we need to focus on database tuning and troubleshooting. Right? Cloud database is great, right? But it will not help you to tune. Yes, there's some options called auto tuning, but generally speaking, there's so much more work for us to do as DBAs, the data professionals, right? Database tuning, performance tuning, and troubleshooting. Right? In this slide and the next slide, we are outlining some of the DBA responsibilities by category and also by comparison between infrastructure as a service and also platform as a service environment. Okay. The cloud does not change the importance or demand of DBAs. Remember that. However, as DBAs, we need to keep pace of changes. As Charles Darwin once said, it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It's the one that's most adaptable to change. The IT and database technologies are changing. As DBAs, we need to adapt to the new changes, not only to survive, but to thrive. Okay, right, just a reminder, fill in the survey and with the opportunity to win a headset. And I know we use up almost all the time here, but definitely you can get in touch with us. And if you have any questions that we need to catch up offline, and either myself and our team can definitely work with you and further discuss in case needed. With that, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks everyone for joining today. Have a great day. Bye.